This meeting to order. We're starting not quite 20 minutes late already. And I'm going to tell you how this meeting will be run at this point. We will be hearing from four sponsors, or actually three sponsors, regarding four bills in full committee. And three of those bills have just passed out of the subcommittee. So we're going to hear from those three bills first. And then we are going to discuss what's going to happen with the two hearings we're going to hear. Then we will take a 5-minute break for our members to step out if they need to. For those who have an interest in signing up to speak on the hearings, to sign up. And then we will come back to order and have the two hearings that we've discussed already, or that are on the agenda, excuse me. All right, so first we're going to hear from Representative Wendell, or Chairman Wendell Willard, regarding House Bill members, House Bill 831.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill before you, HB 831, is a bill that I think its time has come, in the sense that we have recognized over the several years through local bills coming forward, maybe as general bills, but we are time and time again, and especially this session, I saw it with 2 or 3 counties, acknowledging the fact that those who are in service to their counties, their state, in the form of judicial capacity as a magistrate or a probate judge, are being removed from a partisan election to nonpartisan elections. And it certainly is, from a philosophical standpoint, important, because you have those who are making decisions and judicial decisions with magistrates and probate courts need to be nonpartisan. They should not be ones who are placed in a position of being elected leaning toward a particular political philosophy, we'll say, and therefore you don't want people who have to go before them of a different belief, you might call it, concerned about whether they're being treated fairly or not. So as we have changed over the years, I think looking at this, and I go back history-wise from when we first started back in the early 70s to change the election of judges in Georgia to nonpartisan. We started out with the Superior Court judges and state court judges and the appellate court judges at that point in time, and for whatever reason we did not go down to what we call the county level judicial positions, and they've been changed in many cases by local legislation, as we have come before the General Assembly every year. So I think that the point we're trying to reach here is, let's recognize that those who sit in judgment of us, whether it be for our property or our freedom, should do so on a nonpartisan basis. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be glad to take questions.
Okay, it looks like we have some questions. Representative, who is 26? Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, I hadn't followed your bill prior now, so since you presented in subcommittee morning, I've been sitting up here thinking about it, and that's always a dangerous thing for me. I defer quite often to what you think, because I think you're a much smarter lawyer than I am. I can't remember quotes, and so I write them down when I hear a good one. And in my little iPhone here, I wrote this one down a few years back, and it was by Jim Wooten with AJC.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "The law does not chart a single course on many or even most issues. Which path a judge follows depends on a complex mix of ideology, values, life experiences, and personal preferences." And as I remembered that quote and thinking about your bill, I know that my judicial philosophy would be a conservative one. I sit next to another real smart lawyer, Miss Representative Oliver, over there, and sometimes I wonder if she agrees with me on that. And so in my county, I sit here and text my probate judge and my magistrate judge in between the meetings and ask them what they thought. and they're still thinking evidently. But if I knew that their judicial philosophy, which is conservative, would be consistent with everywhere this was in effect, it would make me feel very comfortable. If I knew it might be somebody else's judicial philosophy, which is not conservative, I don't know how I'd feel, and I'm struggling with this.
Well, those who are elected judges, I've had conversations with many of them, and they can't come out and take positions on this as a policy matter, because that's up to us. But invariably, everyone I've talked to says where they were in the past perhaps set up as elected by a partisan basis, they were never comfortable in that role, because that's not what they sit to do. They sit to say judgment, irrespective of what someone's beliefs politically may be, religious beliefs or otherwise. They have to look at the balance of the law as applied to those facts that are before them, and those facts should not be colored by a process of someone having to be elected in a partisan basis. That's kind of a roll-up of my thought about it. And I respect whatever comes back from your judges, but I just say I don't want to appear before a judge, nor I think those of us who are lawyers or having clients who feel that they may not be getting a full, fair hearing and recognition of what comes out of that decision, because they're different in the role of the judge's political beliefs.
One follow-up, and Mr. Chairman, as we discussed a little bit in subcommittee, we already can do this, but it's on a county-by-county basis, and the legislators make that decision.
You're right. For
the magistrate judges and the probate judges. So what we're shifting from here is, rather than having it on a county-by-county or legislative delegation-by-delegation decision, we're going to go statewide with it, and that's the other thing that I'm wrestling with right now, or is that they say where I'm from, I'm wrestling with it. I'm trying to figure out, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
And I respect that concern. I guess it's back to what my personal thoughts are, and I think others, and that is the role of the judge should not be placed with a partisan tainting to it. It's what their way of handling issues before them. And I'm willing to say it certainly is a policy decision that we're trying to address in this bill for the state.
Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, actually one of my questions was just answered about the effect of this bill. And I just want to make a statement and then ask a question. I appreciate this bill. I think it was just yesterday we voted on maybe 3 or 4 different nonpartisan bills, and it seems to come quite often. And I would like to make this uniform and just believe that, like you, that judges should be nonpartisan. My second question is not necessarily related to the bill, but just for my own understanding. Is there any current law or anything, rules with the bar that prohibit judges from displaying any kind of partisan paraphernalia, whether it's in their offices, on their vehicles, any of that?
You've hit on something I really can't fully answer. I don't know what what we call the judicial canons, but there is recognized, I know in the judicial canons, the responsibility of the judge has to be nonpartisan in their way of reviewing and looking at issues before them.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Mosby.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Like Representative Morgan, I do agree philosophically with this. It seems to me it's hard to put this in practice. So if a judge had to vote in a partisan election, they're going to vote some kind of way. And
primaries, yeah.
Right. So it's going to be in some party, and so they do select an ideology. This being handled at the local level tends to make sure that if they are going to have some ideological difference, that it'll be regional, or at least in that local area, for them to have the bend in that area. I'm kind of piggybacking on Representative Fleming's comments there, I don't know. It's seemingly a great concept. I just don't know how you can.
Representative, you look at what we have now. We recognize every other judgeship in Georgia where people are placed before someone who's making decisions, judicial decisions, we'll call it, applying the law to their circumstances, are nonpartisan. We, for whatever reasons, numerous years back, did not get down to the specific county level, which we have with magistrates and probate judges. And we have seen, to say, over the last number of years, time and time again, bills coming through. Now, is it good in one county and bad in another? I don't try to weigh that, but I'm saying from a policy standpoint, what do we recognize in Georgia as being how our judges should conduct themselves? And I think we want them to sit there as nonpartisan. They vote, but they also go to church.
Right.
But we don't say because they're Baptist or Catholic or whatever their religious beliefs are, that's what they carry to the bench as a part of their role. But we're putting them in a position of carrying that to the bench when we have them elected partisan.
Representative Oliver.
For me, choosing a judge, the word is not partisan, the word is not conservative or liberal, the word is independent.
Well, that's a good point.
And
autonomous, yeah, autonomous.
Independence indicates a more likelihood the public's going to see as fairness. There are judicial canons of ethics about participation in partisan fundraising events, and we could hear all that if we wanted to, but I think the time is for us to make this determination that our probate judges and our magistrate court judges are of equal importance and equal status and equal goals of independence as the other judges in the state. At the proper time, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, it's that time, Representative.
Move to pass.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed, like sign. All right, or no. Thank you. So the bill passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee members.
And our next bill to be heard, I have shuffled papers. Okay. Our next bill will be Representative Andy Welch, House Bill 855. Is Representative Welch still here? Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead then and hear House Bill 1585, and it will be presented by Representative Buzz Brockway in lieu of Representative Josh Clark. You're number 23.
Yes, ma'am. Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Give me 1 second to pull the text up.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, I'm bringing to you on behalf of my friend Representative Josh Clark, who couldn't be here today. It's House Resolution 1585, and basically it's just an urging resolution that would urge all governmental buildings around Georgia to display the American flag. And how this came about is one of Representative Clark's constituents is a Gold Star mother. Her son was killed. Her only son was killed in Afghanistan a couple of years ago, and so she goes around the state visiting with veterans and trying to help them out. And she went to a county in Georgia and had to go to the courthouse, and they did not display the flag. And so she took it upon herself to try to find out why, and was told that they don't display the flag there. And she went to a judge, and the judge said, well, you can bring a flag in the building. And the deputies there stopped her and said, you're not allowed to bring that flag in here. And of course, given her patriotic nature and her disposition, she was incensed by this. So she and Josh, Representative Clark rather, began doing some checking and found that there's no law that requires this, but as the resolution points out, it's urged that this happen, that this take place, and that folks follow this voluntarily. So he felt it was appropriate to bring this resolution to sort of reiterate our desire that governmental buildings display the American flag. So that's the resolution.
Questions from the committee? Representative Hightower.
Just have one, but Representative Brockway, do you know why they didn't display it?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but they felt it was offensive to display the American flag.
A courthouse.
A courthouse. Yes, sir.
That it was offensive to display the
United States
United
flag.
States flag.
Yes, sir.
What county?
I'd rather not go there, Representative. But yes, sir, that was, and of course, as you might understand, she was incensed by that and brought that. Yes, sir. It was in the state of Georgia. Yes. Yes.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
No, wasn't Henry County.
All right. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
Move to pass and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Bill moves forward. All right, Representative Welch. We have before us House Bill 855.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 855 is a streamlining and restructuring of the process for service delivery strategy negotiations between cities and counties. As you are aware, the law requires that cities and counties negotiate and come up with contract service arrangements so that they're not duplicating services. So if one is providing fire service, the other is not also providing fire service in the same region, and they're competing against each other. That's just an example, but it contemplates many services. So currently, the 855 gets to the heart of how these negotiations should be handled, what would trigger them, and then what the time frame for getting those discussions resolved should be. Essentially, a party can trigger upon a certain set of items that are listed under lines 31 through 44. There would be triggering mechanisms. Once a call is made by one of the institutions, one of the cities or the county, then the negotiations would begin. We've streamlined the existing law process so that basically there's a preliminary negotiations can occur. If you can't reach a deal within 60 days, then you can trigger a court involvement. It's a senior judge that's called from outside in to hear the dispute. That senior judge immediately orders mandatory mediation. The parties mediate. That's current law now. They have 60 days to get that resolved and hopefully issue or come up with an agreement. If the agreement is then filed with DCA and it's verified by DCA as being compliant with the statute, then everything's great. If they don't, they can proceed on to a hearing before the judge. The judge would issue findings of fact as to how the services should be administered. It's up to them to actually implement those services and implement that new arrangement of facts. If they don't, and the 180-day window has expired, then there are sanctions that are triggered that apply to everybody equally. And those are, current law is that it's grants, certifications like for radar, and permits are all held by the state. You can't get those. And so that starts putting pressure on them to come to a negotiated resolution or implement the agreement. I've added in this legislation an additional 10% withholding of state revenues that are collected by, not state revenues, local revenues collected by the state. So DOR would hold back 10% of the revenues on a monthly basis to increase that pressure to actually have a negotiated settlement. The money then would be returned after the agreement has been finalized and approved by DCA. And what we're trying to do is compact this schedule of negotiations and avoid lengthy litigation so that you have a resolution quickly and timely. And the point of this is ultimately to benefit the taxpayers so they're not wasting money on litigation fees. They are actually getting to a resolution on tax issues. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Representative Oliver.
This is a very big deal.
Yes.
And I appreciate significant amount of work. We have to do something. I'm always in favor of formal mediation and timelines, and I think we have to move this bill forward. And at proper time, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion if I may.
Thank you. Representative, any other questions? All right, the proper time is now.
Move to pass.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Representative Fleming.
Madam Chair, I referenced this when the bill was in subcommittee, and I'll mention it again for the sake of our discussion here. I do think this is extremely important. I remember one of my toughest jobs was before I got here, I was chairman of the county commission, and the only two little cities in my county were in my district. And service delivery strategy agreement was tough because it forced the two governments to sit down and think about, we don't need a water line for the county running on this side of the road and the city running on that side of the road. But I am very curious about what was mentioned by Mr. Grubiak, and that is that they have a joint GMA ACCG committee right now. And so I want us to be very cautious that we don't get too far in front of those two groups that are apparently working together now to resolve the problems. There have been times in the past where those two groups have had disagreements, but they've come up with a solution maybe better than something we could have crafted for them. So although I agree with Representative Aller, I know how important the service delivery strategy agreement is. I don't want to get in front of those two groups, so I'm trying to balance that with the thought that I know that the bright attorney who brought this bill to us, who works in this area, yeah, I'm looking at you, Andy, has done some good work here. So I wonder if those groups made progress at some point sufficiently. Of course, we still have time in the session, how the author might feel about, Madam Chair, slowing this down a little bit if need be.
I think that there's that my intentions here are to encourage that discussion, and as I mentioned, the subcommittee, it was not part of the initial arrangement between the two parties to discuss SDS. They were actually going to be discussing loss negotiations, but my intention was in putting this bill before you and having these public hearings on it was to actually get this discussion started, make sure that those discussions that they have with their panel incorporate SDS and look at the solutions that are necessary to fix that legislation so that it's workable and workable in a timely fashion so that we're not wasting taxpayers' money. That's the ultimate goal.
All right, we have a motion and a second. At this time we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. All right, the bill passes. Continuing on with the same sponsor, we have a separate bill, House Bill 138.
Yes,
Representative Welch.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. 138 is a reform, state reform to the administration and regulates the use of temporary assistance for needy families. This is cash assistance that is provided by the federal government. In the 2010 Middle Class Tax Relief Act, which became effective in early 2012, prescribed the use of TANF cash assistance for certain uses. You could not, retailers nor the recipient could utilize that money in a liquor store or an adult entertainment establishment or place of gambling institution. So what this bill does is it incorporates those things in the first section of the bill on page 1, incorporates those prohibitions. I've added a couple of other retailers to that list. One is those that primarily sell media or products relating to sexual activities. I guess your Starship kind of store maybe. The retail establishments whose primary purpose is to sell tobacco products, and then the other one is for body tattoos or body piercings or tattoos. Those have been added to the list as prohibited places for the use of cash assistance. In addition to that, we have set forth a regulatory mechanism that will require these stores to have MCC codes, which is a merchant commercial code, and attaches to debit cards so that the user of the debit card and the reviewer of a debit card can see where the transaction occurs. So we have it for restaurants, we have it for hardware supply stores. These are universal banking codes that are used. all these institutions would have to register with DOR and take and accept a MCC code and utilize it with respect to these cards. That way you can track the use of the card. Several of these adult entertainment establishments may not actually have an MCC code, or they may be using an MCC code that's not actually affiliated with the adult entertainment establishment, so that you can't detect it. You might imagine how that could be useful for some people. So the second part of the bill gets to what the prohibited purchases, items that you cannot purchase with cash assistance, and those are listed on lines 44 through 50. In addition, it sets up a requirement that signs be posted at ATMs saying you should not use cash assistance for these purchases, and that sign requirement is actually repealed will be repealed in 2018. So it's a temporary educational opportunity that we're using there. The department has mandates in here to maintain a phone line for fraud, a website for fraud. There's punishment provisions under lines 74 through 91. And then that also prohibits the department from entering into contracts that would be violative of this new bill if it does become law. And finally, there's a requirement that the department report back to the Speaker, the Governor, and the President of the Senate, identifying methods and associated costs for implementing better regulatory processes, such as looking at maybe another card or some way to identify the actual transactions to prohibit the use of that money for any of the prohibited transactions in the bill. That's the sum total of the bill. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I did have an amendment proposed by the banking by the credit unions and community banks.
All right, we have a question. Representative Mosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned Starship. What is that? Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot on that one. How big, and how do you know? How big is the?
How do you know?
How big is the problem, though?
And first of all, it's a problem that was documented by 11 Alive a couple of years ago, and there was some exposure used where the monies were used for gambling and liquor stores. I won't name an Augusta liquor store that was frequented and transactions that occurred regularly there. But I think that the problem is it's not I wouldn't say rampant in terms of just an unbelievable amount of numbers, but we really aren't able to track the numbers. So we're having some difficulty in actually identifying how many transactions occur. And the department has since moved this money from an EBT card, an electronic benefits transfer card, which did itemize everything, so you could actually track the account. Shifted all that money onto a nondescript debit card. Now the money is commingled with other monies, unless you solely have TANF on that card. It's now commingled with other monies. It's a debit card. You cannot itemize transaction due to banking regulations. So you have to go subpoena those records in order to get that information. So it becomes very difficult to track the use of that money. And you're seeing abuses, far wider abuses with the SNAP cards than you are perhaps with TANF cash assistance, but nevertheless it does exist, and the federal law does require us to now regulate the establishments in which that money can be used. So this goes beyond the federal law, admittedly, but I think it hits on some areas that we really wouldn't want someone to abuse the system, take that cash and spend it on lottery tickets or spend it on alcohol or tobacco, or pornographic materials. I hope that answers your question the best that I can provide it. We are hoping that we'll get additional information. The subcommittee actually asked for additional information as to the number of investigations and suspensions that have occurred.
Representative, who is 26? He waves. Okay, any other questions for the sponsor? What's the pleasure of the committee? All right. So we have a motion and a second, and now we have an amendment.
Yes, Madam Chair. Speaking, I'm sorry.
Oh, we did adopt. I'm sorry.
Well, when I was pulled out, I was actually pulled out to be asked by the credit the Community Banking Association had just one concern they wanted to raise to you and for you to consider, and I'm favorable to the suggestion. The amendment that you have in your folder is AM 331397. Those amendments were attached to the bill in subcommittee and moved out. If you'll look at line 9, it says here's a safe harbor provision so that the retailers and the banks want an exemption, and I'll explain in just a minute. But would be on line 9 after the word establishment to include the following language: or federally insured depository financial institution. And then I'll explain why that becomes important in just a second. They also asked that we add that we actually insert on line 67 of the bill, it would be a new subparagraph 3, and you would renumber, I'm sorry, new subparagraph 4, and you would renumber 4 to 5. In the following language to be inserted is a disclaimer for those institutions, and it goes as follows, and I'll give this to the chair lady as soon as I'm finished. To the extent that a federally insured depository financial institution is subject to the notice requirements under this code section, comma, those requirements may be satisfied by displaying the notice information on the automated teller machine screen. Banking institutions sometimes actually give out gift cards or sell gift cards at the institution. That would place them under a prohibited transaction, and so they wanted to know if the notice could be actually just put on the screen, similar to the way the fees are shown on the screen. And I said that seemed a very reasonable request to do, and so I just put that before the committee. And I'm happy to share this with whomever needs to see it.
Jeff, do you want this information? Okay. Thank you. All right, so we have, well, go ahead, Representative Fleming.
Do I understand the author to think this is a good amendment?
I do. I think this is appropriate and financially prudent.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we add the amendment at the appropriate time,
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
and Representative Oliver.
I think the first motion the chair might be looking for is a motion do pass 138 as amended by the subcommittee.
That is correct, yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And then you want to do the amendment?
Yeah, and Madam
So,
Chair, as an amendment to the committee substitute, I would offer the amendment that's referenced by the author.
okay. So we are going to vote, or any other discussion then on the first amendment or both? Just the first?
Just the first.
Just the first.
And 2 amendments.
We had a do pass motion for the committee substitute as brought.
So we need to fix that. All right, so
We've already got that.
okay.
The only thing that we need to amend is what the author has given to
There are
us.
2 amendments.
Right.
There are two?
There are two.
Yeah, that's fine. So the first one, you're correct.
Okay.
My apologies.
The
Go ahead and say it.
move to offer the amendment to line between 116 and 117 as referenced on line 9 of the amendment that has already been included in the bill that passed the subcommittee, the language after the word establishment or federally insured depository financial institution.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the first amendment from lines 116 and 117. Any discussion? Those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. All right, the amendment passes. And now moving on to the second amendment, which I'm trying to remember which lines they fall.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would suggest they be inserted at line 67, renumbering subparagraph 4 to make that 5, and then inserting the language that I read earlier as subparagraph 4.
Okay. So this amendment starts at line 67, renumbers 4 to 5, and adds, to the extent that a federally insured depository financial institution is subject to the notice requirements under this code section, those requirements may be satisfied by displaying the notice information on the automated teller machine screen. Does everyone understand this amendment?
Then I second it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the second amendment. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, so now we have a motion to pass the substitute to House Bill 138 with the two amendments we just adopted. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion about this bill as amended? No discussion. So all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Bill passes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Committee.
Thank you. All right. At this point, I am going to share with the committee and the audience what my plan is for the balance of this meeting. It is now 10:26. We started that meeting at 9:50. So, we're going to take a break in a moment, and then we're going into two bills. I know we have other committee meetings meeting at this time. However, we're going to proceed forward because we're going to have some members here who would like to hear, and I welcome the members who do have another committee meeting. I have two who have just left for Ways and Means. I know you have public safety. There are 3 of you on this committee who have public safety, I believe. If you will, go on to public safety and then come back to hear what you can when you finish with your bills over there. All right. I can assure you that there's not much more that could have made my legislative life more difficult than the 2 words, DeKalb County. And I do appreciate each of you being here. We as a committee are going to be very challenged this year by trying to help you fix what you think needs to be fixed. This is the people's house, and we appreciate every one of you being here. I'm curious to know how many of you are here for the very first time, either in the Capitol or in this office building. You've never been here before, so that's very many of you. Raise your hand. Good. Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome to the CLOB and an extension of the Capitol, and we appreciate you being here. I want to remind the committee of what we're dealing with here, and it deals with some new cities. I think this is a very unique situation in that we have 3 new cities that overlap each other. In years past, it wasn't a question of whether or not you didn't have to necessarily vote on a city that sat on top of another city. So you didn't have to make a decision about 2 different cities. You just had to make a decision as to whether or not you felt like that county deserved the right to vote on that city. But I'm just going to show you the map again. We have 3 cities: Tucker, which is in blue. I'll turn it around just a minute for y'all. Lakeside, which is in red, and Briarcliff, which is in green. And over here, same. You're very familiar, I'm sure, Representative Mosby. Anyway, what my intentions are is, first I want to hear from Representative Mosby about H.R. 1330. And what that is a bill that creates a study committee, and he'll share more about that, to really do a study about DeKalb County. We're going to hear from him as soon as we come back from the break. And then after that, and that's going to be a hearing only, because all four of these bills may not pass. I mean, they will not pass. We know that for a fact, unless they come to an agreement of some sort, especially when it comes to the lines of these cities. After we hear from Representative Mosby and whoever he's brought to speak on the bill, then we will take up House Bill 677 for a hearing only. One of the other bills passed the Senate yesterday. One of the other city bills, let's say, passed the Senate yesterday. We're going to have a hearing today, and it appears that most of the people here in the audience are from one of the city that we're speaking of, 677. So we're going to hear from them, and then when that Lakeside bill crosses over, we'll hear from Lakeside. And we will make a decision after crossover what we need to do for DeKalb County. So I'm telling the audience to be prepared. Craig, our aide for the committee, is going to put out a sign-out sheet while we break. I'm asking anyone who has documents to pass out to please put these on our desk as we take our break. And when we come back, we'll take up the first measure, then the second measure. I'm asking you, I'm telling you, this will be limited. We have been here for an hour, and this was supposed to be an hour-and-a-half long meeting. I'm not cutting you off to 30 minutes, and we are going to be taking that break, like I said. I would like to take an hour for both hearings. I do not believe Representative Mosby's is going to be very long at all. 5 minutes is what he's saying. So if we did that, I'm thinking that we could have members sign up for 25 minutes apiece for the pro and the con of Tucker. And trust me when I say that these members of this committee have sat through numbers of hearings where an audience came to show their support, but what tends to happen is that the members in the audience tend to say pretty much the same thing. And I feel like you should be able to, and I've spoken to who I consider to be the lead of your movement, that, you know, pretty much in 25 minutes to 30 minutes, you can hear most everything that we can understand what you're saying. We just do not need to hear it over and over again, which tends to be the case. So, at this point now, it is 10:32. I am going to ask the members to take a 5-minute break, be back at 10:37, and we will take up Representative Mosby. The sign-up sheet will be right here. Please put the documents on the desk, and we will be at ease for 5 minutes. Members will please come back. We need to get the meeting back to order. Sure. That's fine. It took longer than I said I would, didn't I? 5 minutes turned into 10 and then 15, I think. All right. I need to clarify something. Audience members, crossover day is Monday, and I understand that y'all know that. But we still have some options. This committee is charged with trying to figure out which city in DeKalb County will best suit you as citizens of DeKalb County. And there are some options for you, even though we're only having a hearing today and we're not voting on this bill. That does not mean that the city is dead. Trust me. And the committee has met numerous times to discuss this and try to figure out a way to make sure that everyone is heard. So please be patient with us and let us hear what you have to say. And we look forward to hearing from each of you, and or those of you who signed up. But it's not. I heard some sighing when I made a comment a little earlier, and that's not. Just understand that there are processes here that sometimes seem one way, but we can do what we can to try to make sure that everyone is heard and has a voice. Okay. All right. So now we will be hearing from Representative Mosby. He is bringing before us House Resolution 1330, members. Representative, whenever you're ready. What are you? 17. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first start by saying that this bill has nothing to do with Starship. All right, so get that out the way. All right, so as the committee is aware that we have had a number of issues face the Georgia General Assembly specifically related to DeKalb County only. I drafted a resolution from the delegation, the DeKalb County delegation, that attempts to try to keep a lot of the conflict off the floor of the House of Representatives and the floor of the Senate. What we've seen in the past and what we're currently seeing right now is that everyone has an idea about which way the county should go regarding, I guess, their particular ideology or their particular bend on what the county should do next. We are seeing that in the formation of the cities. We're seeing that with the form of government. We're seeing that with the Organizational Act. Just a number of different issues. The school board. We've seen just a number of issues with DeKalb County. So my resolution here, we're asking the Georgia General Assembly to allow for a joint House and Senate study committee to look at DeKalb County in all of its issues, not only the incorporation of areas, but also the Organizational Act. We also are looking at the form of government. We also want to look at all those issues related to ensuring that there is an efficient delivery of services to the citizens of DeKalb County. The study committee we've designed it to comprise of 15 members. We believe that that's large enough for it to be broken into subcommittees to deal with each of those individual areas simultaneously, so we can have a report by the end of 2014. 4 members will be appointed out of the House, 4 out of the Senate. The Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor will get to make an appointment, as well as the CEO of DeKalb County. The Board of Commissioners gets 1 from the school board and 1 from the Chamber of Commerce. We believe that gives not only the authority of the General Assembly for DeKalb County to look at its issues, but we believe that we have all of the individual stakeholders at the table to look at all the specific issues to make sure DeKalb County is functioning effectively. Now, this resolution, I know a lot of people talk about moratoriums and things of that nature. This resolution actually does not ask for a stopping of anything that's going on right now. It's just that if none of the cities pass, we need to have a process to look at this. If 1 or 2 of the cities pass, we still need to have a process to look at how the county is going to efficiently deliver the services to its citizens. So we believe that this is a good step for the county to begin to look at itself. It's signed by most of the members of the DeKalb House delegation. I know there was a similar resolution being done in the Senate to make sure that there was that the Senate DeKalb delegation also recognized that this needed to be done. With that, Madam Chair, I would be glad to take any questions.
Representative Oliver.
Procedurally, this resolution is one option with several other options that we as a committee have before us. And Madam Chair, I want to thank you very much for your patience. I think folks do want to articulate in a wide variety of ways what their wishes are for wishes they wish to be governed in the future. But I just want to give people some encouragement here that whatever options you wished for us to consider is probably procedurally available for us to consider. A work plan, a one-year work plan with economic development and financial analysis with an assured opportunity for you to present your cities in 10 months from now is one option. Another, with the cooperation, that option, this implies the cooperation of the CEO, implies the cooperation of the existing cities and obviously the proposed cities too. But whatever direction we take, I want folks to feel reassured that there are all options available to us at this time, and you should feel free to articulate how you wish us to proceed. If we cannot reach any agreements among ourselves on acceptable borders, a cooperative joint effort, if that's not possible with 2 or 3 cities, then a pause might be appropriate. So to a large extent, this is in your hands about your ability and interest to move forward quickly with a cooperative or to engage with us through this resolution in a very deliberative economic development analysis for the county with other county stakeholders. And thank you again, Madam Chair, for your cooperation.
Thank you, Representative. So we have someone to speak on the bill. Phyllis. If you will, please come to the mic and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and share with us your concerns or considerations about the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Phyllis Mitchell. I actually represent DeKalb County. I'm here today. First, let me apologize that Interim CEO Lee May is unavailable to be here today. Actually, he and the commissioners are currently engaged in passing the 2014 budget. We want to emphasize that, and you've heard especially the CEO say before, and many of you have been engaged and have had conversations with the commissioners. We have no opposition to the creation of new cities. But what we do have opposition to is the current process that does not allow the county to participate in how cities are developed. HB 22 by Representative Oliver was introduced last year that set forth a process for how we get here. What the Board of Commissioners have asked for is a cooling off period. Thus, we are in support of Representative Mosby's Resolution 1330 that allows us an opportunity to do a comprehensive review of county operations. Representative Oliver just made reference to economic development and things of that nature. One of the things that is currently going on is that we are taking a look at economic development in the county. We are taking a look at how can we do cost-saving measures. So in that, what we really need and ask for is a cooling off period so we can be deliberate in this process. Things that we're concerned with as it relates to the creation of a new city is the way our host is currently structured. As it currently stands, if there is a creation of any new cities, technically the county will owe money because we just don't have enough money to pay a new city based upon the current formula. In addition to that, and some of you have had conversations about, there's the unfunded pension legacy costs. That remains a concern for us and how we resolve that. We also inherit with that unfunded health care costs for those retirees. So we simply want an opportunity. I think that the CEO, the Board of Commissioners have met with many of you, have offered to help where possible. And the other thing that we have lingering out there is a master annexation plan where County officials have met with all the existing cities and said, give us your master annexation plan. So we as the county can take an opportunity to really understand what the impact of the creation of new cities and annexation will have on the county. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, Don, I'm sorry, Don Broussard? Yes, thank you. Come on forward.
Thank you, Representative Carter. My name is Don Broussard. I am a resident of DeKalb County in the Sagamore Hills neighborhood, a city planner by profession. I, too, want to speak mostly in favor of this bill. It's a very reasonable bill with a couple of caveats. I realize it's unfortunate we didn't have a bill like this last year, but we're getting it this year. That's good. It's a reasonable thing to want to study these issues in DeKalb County. As you just heard from Phyllis, certainly the CEO supports this bill. That almost raises a red flag with me. It's what he's been asking for. Our concern as a active supporter of the City of Briarcliff initiative is this is a good bill as long as it is not merely a way to defer reforms that need to be made. My concern, and I realize the frustration of the committee and perhaps the entire General Assembly on these issues in DeKalb, but the reality is I don't think there's going to be any reform in DeKalb County unless it is imposed by the General Assembly. I think you all need to send a message that we expect DeKalb County to clean its house up and reform itself. This is a means to do that. But as a citizen, I'm still waiting for a reform bill this year. Apparently, we can't get one of those together for DeKalb County's government. Perhaps in this study, it will do the job. One other concern is that the makeup of the committee. I think Representative Mosby does refer to experts being on the panel. It doesn't really say who or what those are. I'm glad that word is in there. I think last year when a similar bill was proposed, or a resolution was proposed, my concern was, well, when I read it, I said, well, these are going to be probably the usual suspects who get appointed to these sorts of things. I hope that is not the case this time. There are citizens, there are academics, there are professionals in DeKalb who can really contribute to this committee. I am a little concerned there's no budget for this committee. I don't know what the solution to that is. Perhaps Mr. Mosby can address that. But thank you, and we hope it goes forward.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions for the speaker? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Representative? And then we'll move to the next bill.
Again, echo Representative Oliver's thanking you for allowing us to have this opportunity to present and to look at these issues in DeKalb County. Again, we don't want to adjudicate our issues on the floor of the House of Representatives or on the floor of the Senate, and we would love to have the opportunity to have a document that kind of guides the General Assembly's actions as it relates to DeKalb County since just about every legislative session since 2007 we've been dealing with our issues. So to have a formal document sanctioned by this General Assembly to look at these issues, I think would go a long way in helping alleviate a lot of the angst that you see on the floor of the House. So
I'd love to do away with some of that angst on the House floor regarding DeKalb County. All right. Well, thank you, Representative Mosby, and we will certainly take this into consideration. All right, Tucker, here we go. What? Okay. Billy is, or Representative Mosby. I mean, Mitchell, I'm sorry. That's what DeKalb County does to me. All right. So what I'm going to do is allow you to present your bill, Representative. And then I have the sign-up sheet. It is now 11:03. So most of us have been here since 8:30 this morning. One has gone and come back, and we expect many others to come back after they have left to go to other committee meetings today. So please excuse them coming in and out. Representative, go ahead and present your bill, and then I will explain what we'll do regarding the testimony from the audience.
First of all, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I want to thank you so very much for this opportunity. Before I get into this, having had the opportunity to speak to all of you about this, I certainly want to say publicly how I appreciate the dedication and thoughtfulness that you put into this. This is an effort that is citizen-driven, and every now and then we as legislators get the opportunity to really see a citizen-driven movement. This is certainly one of those times. I bring before you HB 677, and I am working off of LC 28712-7ERS. And simply stated, it seeks to incorporate the city of Tucker in DeKalb County, to provide for a charter for the city of Tucker, to provide for incorporation, boundaries, power of the city, to provide for general powers and limitations on powers, to provide for a governing authority of such city and the powers, duties, authority, election, terms, method of filling vacancies, compensation, expenses, qualification, prohibitions, and districts relative to members of such governing authority. Let me just point out to you, as I've heard about petitions, I've heard about polling. I've done my own polling, as all of you in this room know. I've done a polling of the members of the House to find out what members thought about the city of Tucker, and invariably, almost to a person, the response was, well, I thought Tucker was already a city. Outstanding area. Let me just give you some background. Tucker, Georgia, the Tucker, Georgia train depot was established in 1892. The highest point of elevation on the CSX railroad line between Atlanta, Georgia and Richmond, Virginia is in Tucker. The first postmaster of Tucker, Georgia was appointed in 1892. WSB's radio transmitters, Tucker is the home of that and has been for the last 70 years. Talking about government, the ARC's Tucker Area Livable Center Initiative and the Tucker Overlay District exist. The Tucker, some of the businesses that are located in Tucker with a Tucker address, I might add: Oglethorpe Power Corporation, the Big Green Egg, the United States Poultry and Egg Association. The Tucker is home, of course, to the Tucker Business Association, the Tucker Civic Association, the Main Street Alliance, the Alliance of Old Town Tucker Merchants Association, the Tucker Historical Association, the Tucker Parent Council. I might add that should Tucker become a city, it doesn't have to create these kind of interests, as I've seen from some other proposals. The North Lake Festival Shopping Center, the Cofer Crossing Shopping Center, have Tucker address. It's home of Matthews Cafeteria since 1955. The Tucker Masonic Lodge number 42 since 1940. The Tucker Mattress Company since 1917. Cofer Brothers, it's since 1919. Matthews Cafeteria since 1955. Bikeways of Tucker exist there. It is home of 120-acre Henderson Park and Henderson Park Community Garden. Home of the Kelly C. Cofer Park, Montreal Park, Peters Park, Tucker Nature Preserve, and the Tucker Recreation Center. Home of a weekly 42-mile road bicycle racing called Tucker Ride. The annual Tucker Day celebration has existed since 1957. The monthly Tucker Cruise In takes place, the annual Tucker Chili Cook-Off, the annual Taste of Tucker, Tucker Farmers Market, Christmas on Tucker Main Street, Tucker Football League since 1955, the Tucker Youth Soccer Association, and Heritage Golf Links, which was formerly owned by Dr. J, did a great fundraiser for an outstanding legislator there. Tucker High School has been there since 1918. Next year's freshmen will be the 100th graduating class. The 208 in 2011 4A state football champions are from Tucker High School. As some of you can recall, I hosted them at the Capitol after each of those championships. Certainly they offer a very rigorous IB program and have 18 AP courses. Tucker's High School's Habitat for Humanity chapter has been recognized as one of the top high school chapters in the nation. The chapter has raised over $100,000 since 2002. Tucker Middle School is on track to be the first certified STEM middle school in Georgia. The 2013 DeKalb County Middle School football champions they are. Libsey Elementary School, Georgia School of Excellence, 2007-2008 National Blue Ribbon School. Certainly Evansdale Elementary School, a Georgia School of Excellence in 2006. Midville Elementary School, a Georgia School of Excellence in 2006, an IB school. Between the efforts of the Tucker Civic Association and the Tucker Historical Society, Friends Tucker Parks, Friends of Henderson Park, Friends of Johns Homestead Park, Friends of Kelly Cofer Park, Friends of Montreal Park, and the Friends of the Tucker Nature Preserve, the Tucker community has produced tens of thousands of volunteer hours, more than most communities in the state of Georgia. Many of the Tucker annual events are co-hosted by various organizations around Tucker. Dozens of businesses sponsor these events. Certainly, Tucker volunteers cleared 22,000 pounds of trash and recyclables from DeKalb County property along the South Fork of Peachtree Creek. Over 260 tires were recycled. Friends of Tucker Nature Preserve did mulching, raking, removing of invasive plant species, blaze hiking trails, and clean up the outdoor areas. Certainly, to quote an organization, Park Pride, one of the partnering organizations, Tucker volunteers have transformed the Tucker Nature Preserve from an invasive wasteland to a new Tucker destination. You know, I can go on and on and on about what is clearly a community of interest, what is clearly, from my informal survey of you, my colleagues, what we've come to know all like Tucker is a city anyway. They ought to be formally recognized as such. I have to my left Frank Allman, who's going to take over the presentation at this time, and certainly we'll proceed from there.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, first, thank you very much. It's been a long road for us to get here to this first public hearing on the city of Tucker. There's been lots of talk about cities in DeKalb and all kinds of proposals. We think today is really day one for us, and we thank you for hearing us. And Representative Mitchell, somewhere around May 21st, we're going to be looking for a chairman of the Tucker Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I certainly hope you'll make yourself available for that. My name's Frank Allman. Tucker, Georgia is my home. I'm involved there in a lot of ways, one of which is that I know some of you, and you know me as immediate past chairman of the DeKalb Republican Party for 2 terms in 4 years. But that's not why I got involved in the cityhood issue, because we don't consider cityhood a partisan issue. The reason I got involved in it was I saw a year ago this situation developing where we were going to have what you might call a train wreck in the legislature with lots of difficult decisions to be made, and really beyond that, rending our community, which is so vital, so involved, so engaged, distracting it and rending it into these just very divisive kinds of issues. But over the course of the process, I have become convinced there's no finer, stronger community anywhere in DeKalb County than Tucker. Its 120-year history, I don't think we've faced a greater challenge, but I don't think we've ever responded in a nobler fashion than we have at this moment in our history. The leaders of Tucker Together and Tucker 2014, the leadership of this movement, have been variously maligned as Republicans posing as Democrats bent on wrecking Republican plans, as naysayers who really don't want a city at all, negligent stewards who shoulda, coulda, woulda incorporated a long time ago, obstinate negotiators in bad faith, and we're grateful for this time to set the record straight. Tucker Together began as a nonpartisan, non-advocacy community education group about a year ago when the city of Lakeside published a proposed map that included about 40% of the land area previously recognized as Tucker. The group held 4 public meetings that were attended by hundreds of Tucker residents to study a range of alternatives, including cityhood, including doing nothing, including simple outright opposition to a city of Lakeside, including aligning ourselves in some way with one or more other existing cities. The conclusion of all of that was that cityhood, formalizing cityhood for Tucker, was the best avenue for us to protect our identity, to retain the character of Tucker, and to allow us to focus on economic development, the things that local communities do best because they're motivated to, because they're in a time and place to focus on those things, unlike any other level of government or any form of representation. We raised well over $30,000 for our feasibility study, mostly from individual citizens like those you see behind me here, but also enough to conduct a third-party poll of the entire Tucker community as to their thoughts about cityhood or other alternatives. Once we concluded cityhood was our best course, Tucker responded resoundingly and in great numbers. So I'm going to tell you briefly about our proposal, then you're going to hear from some of our members of our community. Can you help me with that map for a second? This is a version, I think, of what you've got in front of you. Yours may be slightly more current than this, but just conceptually, I think it'll make the point for you. So this is Interstate 85 going northeast out of Atlanta toward Greensboro and Charlotte. This is 285 coming around from the top end of the perimeter. So this is Spaghetti Junction, just to sort of get you oriented. This is Spaghetti Junction right here. We drew a map of Tucker basically outside 285. The center of the city, the main street you've heard mentioned, is right there. The other 2 cities that overlap to a greater or lesser degree with Tucker, roughly over there. This is a big area of contention. This is really what the fight is about. This is North Lake Mall, which you've also heard is kind of at the center of the storm. It's the area that's in all 3 maps. Frankly, that's less of a problem. This is a big problem. This is what kills Tucker if the existing map of Lakeside is passed. So, to the greatest extent possible, our borders respect natural, existing, easily recognizable boundaries and a cohesive community of interest, as Representative Mitchell described. It also takes into account historically and federally recognized places and the views of people who live there now, as well as some of them, many of them, whose families have lived there for literally generations. Tucker's not only balanced in terms of the geography, great neighborhoods and communities, but a nearly ideal mix of residential, commercial, industrial, retail around the various parts of the city of Tucker. It's also well balanced by any demographic measure: age, race, political affiliation. In fact, I might say if you were to sit down with a blank piece of paper and draw up a city, it might look very much like Tucker. The facts you should know about our proposal are these. First of all, Tucker is feasible as drawn and according to the requirements this body laid out for such a feasibility study. Tucker's already a well-established community with a main street. You've heard some of those things. I'm going to save you the effort of hearing it again. But the existing infrastructure of volunteer organizations like the Business Association, the Main Street Alliance, all those things, that's what has driven Tucker for a very long time. Beyond those things and the grants for livable centers and lifelong communities, grants from the Atlanta Regional Commission, we created our own zoning overlays. There's not 1 but 2 community improvement districts in the borders of the Tucker that you just saw, where businesses have come together voluntarily to tax themselves and establish regulations for themselves to drive economic development, to seek the long-term improvement of the city of Tucker. All that, by the way, has been done without the benefit of cityhood, of formalized cityhood behind us. That's volunteers taken out of their own time to go and do those things. So we are proposing to form a city based on those strengths. Planning and zoning, code enforcement, parks and recreation. The very things that local people have been doing in Tucker for themselves. They're ready to take the next step. They're ready to have that imprimatur of cityhood behind them, also with the protection that when they are working in their local community, they're working for the benefit of their local community. Our proposal, the Tucker proposal, is the only proposal that allows everyone in Tucker to vote. If we vote on ultimately a lakeside map like the one that passed the Senate yesterday, the people inside the lakeside map get to vote. The people outside Tucker, who have been the stalwarts of that community for all this time, get no vote, no voice, no nothing. And their future will be determined by a group of people that are quite distant. Part of our point is, and what we're asking you to do, is to pass a referendum for a city of Tucker today. You can do this right now. And the important thing is when you do that, you won't just accomplish a referendum for a city of Tucker that makes sense. You can do it without infringing on the rights of others in other cityhood movements that retain that same self-determination. If you see the map in front of you, Tucker is Tucker. We can do Tucker. The people of Tucker can handle Tucker. And if we do Tucker, there's still plenty of room for another great city right here, somewhere in here. Call it what you will. Make the borders where you want. That's not our business. We're saying we can do this. You can give us the authority to do that. You've done no harm to anybody else. And we can move ahead with the city of Tucker regardless of whatever else happens with other cityhood movements. The point is, Tucker is already what these recently conceived of cities hope to be one day. And so the obvious question becomes, why should others be allowed to tear apart the fabric of an existing, well-established, highly successful Tucker to try something new? Why shouldn't Tucker receive the respect due to a long-term, well-established, very successful community? We're asking you to vote today, tomorrow, first thing Monday morning, to preserve one of DeKalb's greatest assets by passing this bill to recognize Tucker as a city. The senator who represents virtually all of Tucker is in favor of our proposal. I think the representative here could be said to be in favor of our proposal. He represents most of the area of Tucker that you have there. The lone Republican county commissioner in DeKalb County is a resident of Tucker, supportive of Tucker, and has expressed in writing in the last 48 hours her opposition to the lakeside map that passed the Senate yesterday. Let there be no doubt about where the representatives of Tucker stand on the issue of Tucker. Now you have a bill coming over from the Senate. We're asking you to pass a bill for Tucker to create a competing bill and force the conversation to continue. We are prepared to negotiate. We're prepared. We have made offers. We have made concessions. We made the only real concessions in this discussion. We've been rejected. We ask you to pass this bill to create a further opportunity to continue that. Lacking the time or ability or capacity to actually pass a bill for Tucker, we would ask you when that bill comes over from the Senate to substitute the Tucker bill for it and send it right back to the Senate, where they'll reject it again, but again, it will force the conversation to continue. And we are ready and willing. You know, we've been down here. You've seen my colleague nearly 24/7. We're in the game. We're willing to talk. And we beg this committee to take action that will cause that continued negotiation to continue. So I'm going to quit. You've asked to hear from some members of our community, and we have some who are prepared to speak.
Madam Chair, how do you wish to proceed? To hear from members of the audience and then a summation?
Well, I wish to first address why my name was not on that Legislator of the Year award. Do you have an answer for that?
I do not. I'm sure it was oversight.
Okay. Certainly. It must have been. Any questions for the sponsor?
Yeah. But how do you wish to proceed to hear from members?
Well, I'm going to ask the members of the committee if they would like to ask any questions of you, and then we will proceed forward with the testimony. So any questions from our members? All right, so the time at this point is 11:23. It is my intention to be finished with this hearing at 12 o'clock. So we have two members of the audience who would like to speak against the bill, and I'm going to take their testimony first. What I'll do is just take their testimony first, and then when they finish, the balance of the time will be for those of you, and I have 14 signed up to speak for the bill. But again, I want to remind you, if someone has said it, we did hear it, and please keep that in mind that you don't need to say it again. But we welcome your comments. I just want you to remember that. We did hear you the first time. So I'm going to call up first Robert Stamper. So I'm going to limit you to 5 minutes.
Okay, I won't take that long.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Madam Chairwoman, representatives, my name is Robert Stamper. Thank you very much for having this meeting. I've come to speak against the city of Tucker, and given that I'm one of two, I may be an underdog. I don't know. I feel like an underdog, but I don't know. I always root for the underdog, so that's okay. All right. I live in unincorporated Stone Mountain. My family settled there about 60 years ago. My grandfather built our home place in Stone Mountain. Where I live, I also moved there with my wife when it was time for us to buy our first home. Live very close to my family. This is hard for me, this entire affair, because we're talking about my hometown, where I grew up, where my family lives, where I've always lived, and I'm from Stone Mountain. My part of Stone Mountain would become the furthest eastern part of the new city of Tucker. There are many arguments against the city of Tucker. Let me tell you my father's first, and then I'll tell you mine. My father wishes he could be here today. He's never visited the Capitol. My father's a retired Marine Corps fighter pilot. He's disabled. He wasn't physically able to come. But I've spoken at length with him about this. His question to me I had no answer for. It was, and let me just say first off, he's a staunch Republican. He would feel very at home in today's General Assembly and in Governor Deal's office. He would love it. He and I don't agree about everything, but we agree about the Tucker question. As a lifelong conservative, his question to me was this: where is the overlap between traditional values of fiscal conservatism and limited government and the effort to create a city of Tucker which would cost $16.6 million a year, according to the proponents' own calculations, out of which there will be charged to the citizens and business owners of Tucker at least $1.8 million of new fees that they'll have to start paying because the city was created, which includes nearly a tripling of the franchise fees that we all pay for electricity, which also includes over $5 million for mayor/admin. That's an astonishing sum to me. When I have mentioned that number to people in currently existing cities, they're astonished. That number elicits guffaws that the government that Mr. Allman and would want to create and that my representative is supporting would cost over $5 million a year. Doesn't sound good. His other point is, how does limited government, how are these values served by the creation of an additional new layer of government sandwiched in among all the ones we already have? Why don't we try to fix our problems without creating new, more government? And I don't know why. Those are his rationale. My rationale is somewhat different. I feel that it's morally wrong. It isn't right. Number one, it's not right to do this to me and my neighbors who don't want to have a new address, who react viscerally when they hear Mr. Allman, whom I respect, talking about how though the Lakeside effort vitiated part of what is traditionally Tucker, Tucker is not doing it. That's a stunning thing to hear because he's doing it currently to me and to my family and to my home. He believes his territorial integrity was violated. But cruelty in response to cruelty is not a virtue. And that's what I'm experiencing right now. What I want to see is a united DeKalb in which we actually stick together to fix our problems. The closest solution I've heard to that is Mr. Mosby's. That at least gives us a chance to solve our problems on our own without balkanizing the county in which I was born and raised, because that would be wrong. It disturbs me to hear the lady who's here representing CEO May talking about how the county has nothing against the creation of new cities. That's a disturbing comment. I'm deeply disturbed by it. The county has everything to lose from the creation of new cities, as would any county that broke up into new towns with their own governments all over the place. And the last thing I'll say is this. Only 3 services would be provided over and above that mayor and admin that I mentioned by the new city of Tucker: parks, code enforcement, and zoning. I have yet to hear anyone articulate a coherent or compelling rationale why we should build a new $16 million government so that we can have replacement services for code enforcement, zoning, and parks. No, thank you. I'm asking you to please do whatever you can to see that this measure not pass and to recommend that it not pass. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Stamper. Any questions for the speaker? No questions. Okay, next up, Bill K-Duck.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Representatives, my name is Bill K-Duck. I'm a citizen of DeKalb County and have been from 1976. And I speak as both a resident of the Smoke Rise community, which is to be included in the proposed city of Tucker, and particularly as a property owner in the Stone Mountain Community Improvement District, which is off Mountain Industrial Boulevard and is a very, very important part of the new proposed city of Tucker. Our CID was formed several years ago to improve our area, to improve security, and to make the CID and the Tucker area a more attractive place to keep the existing property owners and to attract new property owners. The CID serves as a major source of revenue for the proposed city of Tucker. The tax digest amount is $126 million. The CID property owners will not have a vote in any eventual city referendum. We are industrial property owners, not voters, in this proposed city of Tucker. Despite the CID being the funding core for Tucker, the various Tucker groups have not included the CID in the city discussions. The group has addressed the CID board, but did not come to a meeting last week that was specially called for CID owners. We were very interested to hear what the proposed city of Tucker would do for us, the CID. Security is a significant issue in our CID. Our CID alone spends more than $120,000 a year out of its budget, which is a very significant portion of the budget. And that $120,000 is spent for patrols in the evening, in the night hours, to improve the security in our area. And it's been very, very successful. But that's a significant concern for us. Those funds and all the operating funds for the CID are paid for by an additional tax that we industrial property owners pay. Willingly, I might add. The most recent proposal by the Tucker groups leave policing to DeKalb County rather than improving our police protection. If Tucker is diminished by an eventual city of Lakeside, the viability of Tucker is reduced and, in my opinion, in jeopardy. If there's an opportunity for either an enlarged city of Lakeside to include our CID, I would support that action. I'm not against the city of Tucker per se, but I wish to raise the concerns of the CID property owners who are generally being ignored in this city-making process. We are the major tax base, and our concerns are not being solicited. Thank you, Madam Chair and Representatives.
Thank you. Representative Oliver.
There are multiple CIDs in this proposed map for Tucker, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is your CID and where's the other CIDs?
Our CID is called the Stone Mountain CID. It generally runs down Mountain Industrial Boulevard.
Okay.
From the Gwinnett County line. It actually crosses 78 and goes down to Ponce de Leon.
And is it in and outside this map, or is it only inside this map?
Inside.
Totally inside?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then, as I understand the map, is that true so far as? Okay. The other CID is the Tucker CID. Okay. I'm not a member. I can't speak to that very well, but my understanding is that it includes part of Tucker and goes essentially down Lawrenceville Highway.
Thank you.
Is that the generalization?
Thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay. All right. So at this point, it's 11:34. My intention, let me just be, again, very honest with you about how I want to do this, is when we hear the proposals for the three cities, I'm going to give each one of them an hour. So you have your hour that started right at 11 o'clock. So it's 11:34, and we have 14 members of the audience who would like to speak. I'm not going to limit anyone to a certain number of minutes, although 2 minutes would probably be what you want to stay under. But I'm going to call up the very first one, David Bundrick, who I recognize well, but come on up and begin your testimony. And again, if you've heard it once, you do not need to repeat it. Come on forward.
I'll take a couple of hours of annual leave for this. There are a lot of things that I could say that I would like to say, but I think that I will limit it to this and get out of the way and get back to work. I would just like to repeat two words or two phrases that I've heard over and over in my time up here, particularly from the majority party. That's small government and local control. If the city of Tucker, and these are rough figures, I don't have the exact figures, but it's approximately correct. If the city of Tucker were created as it is today, it would create a city about the size of Decatur or Cartersville, kind of a village-size town where every voter would have his or her voice heard and would have a say in what goes on. If the city of Lakeside, as it's proposed now, were created, it would be the 10th largest city in the state of Georgia. It would be bigger than 127 of our counties. That's a huge city to be plopped down with very little thought or rushed through, essentially. If the city of Lakeside, with the expansion to include all of Tucker, it would be the 6th largest city in the state of Georgia. That is not small government, and it's not local control. I had several other things that I wanted to say, but there are other people more articulate than I. But just remember, small government, local control, small village, Decatur versus the size of Macon. Who has the most say? That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker from the committee? Thank you. Keith Hanks.
Madam Chair, Representatives, thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Keith Hanks. I'm a member of the Executive Board of the City of Briarcliff Initiative. I'm a YR, a young Republican. I would consider myself to be a pragmatic conservative. I hold an MBA, and professionally I work with advertising agencies. I know a lot about marketing. and how to connect consumers of all demographics. And contrary to Representative Mosby, I do not work in the IT industry, but that's a whole other story. Briarcliff has been on the record that a city of Tucker will enrich the community and help revitalize reform that's needed in DeKalb County. Tucker has strong existing community roots. We've heard about them today. It is highly respected and regarded throughout the area. I'm a resident inside the perimeter of Decatur, unincorporated DeKalb County. While Briarcliff has a small disputed border with Tucker in what we'll refer to as the North Lake area, Briarcliff believes that the two can coexist as good neighbors. And we think that a border resolution can be achieved in this session. The legislative process is paved with uncertainty in many paths. In a lot of ways, it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book that a fourth grader might read. Turn to page 4 if you want this, turn to page 27 if you want that. It's just a lot of scenarios. It's the belief that both groups believe that mutual cityhood will benefit the overall county both financially and as a draw for business to put Central DeKalb on the short list of potential places that residents want to move to and businesses want to relocate to. And I'm speaking as a person that has not been here for a generation. I'm speaking as a person that moved from Massachusetts 7 years ago. The world that exists in Atlanta from my perspective is going to be very different than a lot of people in this room. We have to also give credit, both groups, to Lakeside. Lakeside is the catalyst that did start talking about cityhood. The sooner that we get cityhood resolved for Central DeKalb, the sooner this will stop appearing in the General Assembly. I moved here in 2007, and we've been talking about DeKalb since 2007. The other thing that's a concern to me is putting brand identity to the area. Again, as a marketing person, folks in my demographic, in my age range, they don't look to move to this part of DeKalb. They don't aspire to it. They end up here. It's not really on the map for them, and that's something that has to change both for residential folks and new businesses, especially as we want the metro area to grow. Briarcliff is also on the record of referring to the proposed City of Lakeside, Senate Bill 270, as a redundant and unnecessary city. Let me repeat, a redundant and unnecessary city. Lakeside passed the Senate, it's coming over to the House. Any resident of Lakeside can be included either within Tucker or Briarcliff, and that's important to note. Lakeside also does not provide coverage to all eligible residents in unincorporated DeKalb the way that Tucker, Briarcliff, or a published annexation plan do. Lakeside might be positioned to win the battle legislatively, but whether or not they can win the war and the end game of passing a voter referendum in less than 90 days on May 20th remains a question. Lakeside alienates many communities inside the perimeter, and it separates neighborhoods outside the perimeter in what's considered to be Tucker. I close with a warning. Before the end of this decade, the voters will likely vote in a solution for DeKalb cityhood. Representatives, get this wrong, and DeKalb will continue its slide. Get this right, and the area prospers, and it lifts up all of DeKalb and all of the surrounding areas. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you. Ann Lerner.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. I am here today to represent the people of Tucker, many of them here, many of them working hard, who want to vote on cityhood to gain local control of their existing community, the community of Tucker, not a community drawn at someone's dining room table or a community that changes every few days. They want to vote for their long-standing community that has been around for 121 years. Today should be about people and the great passion they have for Tucker, their home. People who roll up their sleeves and volunteer countless hours side by side, no matter their differences. Trust me, we don't all agree in this room, but we do agree about Tucker. We want to continue to make Tucker a great place to live for everyone. You won't have to worry about Tucker. We will be a successful city. We share a love for Tucker's heritage and a vision for Tucker's future. These aren't just words, but you can see it in our actions when we are working with the Tucker Historical Society to clean up a cemetery where Tucker's founders are laid to rest, enjoying a community event like Tucker Days on Main Street where we gather to celebrate with our neighbors, when we are writing grants for improvement projects, when we are beautifying our parks, serving on the DeKalb County Planning Commission or the DeKalb County Parks and Green Space Boards, or when we come together today to share with you the story of Tucker. I don't envy you. Every day, every day, you are listening to people like me. Every day, you are having to make tough decisions for thousands of people that you might not even know or never get to meet. But today, you have the opportunity to make the decision to help us to write Tucker's positive story. I'm sorry, I get emotional. The one in which you play the hero, not only to the Tucker community, but to your constituents, who will applaud you for doing the right thing by allowing people like this who work hard for their community and love their community the chance to vote on a city of Tucker. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Kay Stewart. And I just want to mention it's 11:44. Sorry, but I'm going to be fair to all three cities, and 1 hour is what I'm giving each one. So go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and representatives. I will do my best. Economy of words is not always my best gift, but I've brought something to help me. My name is Kay Stewart. I have been a resident of Tucker, along with my husband, for over 30 years. We raised our 3 children, who are now young adults, through Midvale and Tucker High School. We live within steps of Tucker High School and Main Street, and our neighborhood is now drawn into the city of Lakeside. I honor and echo the words of support that have been uttered today, and I want to offer one unique bit of evidence for your consideration. And I brought with me to do that a publication that's over 10 years old, aptly named Up Close and Personal in Tucker. I was humbled to be invited to write an article for this publication over 10 years ago, largely because of my investment and love of Tucker High School Habitat for Humanity. And you've heard that mentioned by Representative Mitchell, although I'll have to say there's one correction to that. We've not raised over $100,000. We've raised almost $200,000 for Habitat for Humanity. And we've been able to do that and been able to help build a Habitat home each year for 10 years of our existence as a campus chapter because of the strong support and vitality from our Tucker community, business people, churches, retired people, and the family that is Tucker High School. So what I would like to do is read to you the last paragraph. I'd love to read you the entire article because it shows my deep love and passion for this community, but I want to read the last paragraph as an example. Remember, all this grew out of a seed planted by reading a book together. You see, Tucker High School Habitat for Humanity was born out of community because we were invested in reading the same book as a community that was Tucker. That seed became Tucker High School Habitat. I believe it took root because the Tucker community provides fertile soil for growing and building things that last. As I said, I've been thinking a lot lately, and the longer I live, the more clearly I see certain things. I can clearly see that Tucker, with all its strengths and weaknesses, is a good and strong community. Tucker High is aptly described as a community school with a lot of heart. And I hope I never take that for granted. The extreme joys and sorrows of this year affirm for me there is no better place to live, learn, play, and serve than Tucker. Many who have gone before leave a lasting legacy, and I hope my family can honor them by continuing to build up people and good community to be a vital part of the goodness that is Tucker. So I ask you to attend to and remember how fragile and important authentic community is to our democracy, and support Tucker. The time for Tucker is now. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Any questions? All right. Elizabeth Beck, and on deck is Sean Stone, perhaps? It's 11:48.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Beck. I've been a resident of Tucker for over 25 years. Tucker is a wonderful, caring community of parents, students, teachers, business leaders, pastors, and everything in between. Our family moved to Tucker to raise our 4 children, and they attended the local public schools. Some are graduated, some are still in. We are very proud of Tucker. I love how our community throws a parade when we have something to celebrate on our main street. I love that our students can walk from their school to the library, to the park, to a local restaurant. When my daughter takes guitar lessons on Main Street, I can walk across the street and wait for her at the local bakery. In Tucker, we're not trying to create a community. It already exists. Thank you very much for considering Tucker.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, Sean. Okay, come on up.
I'm sorry, I'm Ann Lewis. I think I might have been between.
I'm sorry.
That's okay,
You're
no
right.
problem. That's all right. My name's Ann Lewis. I work in Atlanta, but my heart and my life are in Tucker. My husband Brad and I moved to Tucker for our first and only home 22 years ago because we thought it would be a good place to raise our children, which we didn't have at that time, but thankfully came along. I don't think I can match Representative Mitchell's description of all the activities in Tucker, but he certainly has them down pat, and that, I think it shows you that in Tucker there's something for everyone. And if your plan has a stat sheet attached to it, you'll see that Tucker is a very diverse community, and that's one of the reasons that we moved there. I think it's safe to say that the city of Lakeside would not be as diverse as Tucker. Tucker, if you attend the activities that Representative Mitchell sees, you'll see that diversity in action. We work together because we love our community. Contrary to some rumors that I've heard in the last few days, we're not here to talk bad about Lakeside or Briarcliff or North Lake. We're here to tell you about Tucker. What's happened is that in constructing Lakeside, it's as if Tucker doesn't exist anymore. Tucker can either be a little part of Lakeside, or in my case, I won't be part of any city. I know eventually somebody will take me in, but not under the city of Lakeside. And as Representative Mitchell mentioned, everybody already thinks Tucker is a city. So it isn't a stretch to say that of these 3 cities, the one that already exists is Tucker. But with Lakeside, Tucker won't be Tucker anymore. I was astonished to hear that Lakeside would be the 10th largest city in Georgia. And with no disrespect to any large cities, if we in Tucker wanted to live in a large city, we have plenty of places in Georgia, even within 20 miles of our home, to live in if we wanted to be in a big city. But we don't want to move. We want to live in Tucker because it's absolutely terrific. And all we're asking you is that you let us have a vote on whether the city of Tucker will continue to exist. Tucker as it is today, a diverse community that, as several speakers have already said, we've already got the apparatus in place. We are the city of Lakeside, Briarcliff, and Tucker. We're the one that's already there. I want to thank you for your service. I don't envy you either. I know that it's probably a very difficult thing for you, but I think that in Tucker, we are together. And we want to remain that way, and all we're asking you to do is to consider that we do exist. If the city of Lakeside passes, it will be a message that Tucker does not exist. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're not going to have any questions from the members, so we'll stop saying that. All right, we have 8 more to speak and 8 minutes to go. So,
thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try not to duplicate any efforts, but I'd like to put a face and a family to what Representative Mitchell said earlier. My name is Sean Stone. I've lived in the Tucker area with my wife for 23 years. Both she and I graduated from Lakeside High School, moved out to Tucker. I worked in the Tucker community for 32 years. Both our kids have attended the 3 public schools, Livesey, Tucker Middle, Tucker High School. Very satisfied. We've both my wife and I have been involved with the PTA. I was president of the school council at the middle school. Both of our kids played soccer at Tysa, the Henderson Park. I was a coach there for 3 years. I've owned a business in the Tucker community since 1997. I'm the current president-elect of the North Lake Rotary Club. Was a scout leader for 5 years at Troop 129. I'm a member of the Tucker Civic Association. Been a member of the First Christian Church of Atlanta on La Vista Road in Tucker. I participate in the Tucker Cruise-In. I've participated and enjoyed Tucker Day since 1982, and that's kind of why we were drawn to Tucker, because of that community spirit that manifests itself every year. We've also involved with the Chili Cook-Off, Taste of Tucker, Tucker Farmers Market. You've heard it all. The list goes on and on. We moved there because of a successful community at the time. We'd like to continue that success, so I ask you to consider the vote for Tucker. Thank you.
thank you. Sonia? And I can't go there. Thomas Walker, you're on deck.
I'll say it for you.
Oh, please.
My name is Sonia Shubsky, and I am president of Tucker 2014, which is the advocacy arm for the proposed city of Tucker. 35 years ago, my family moved to DeKalb County, just inside the perimeter. When my husband and I were searching for our first home together, we wanted to be near them as we raised our family. Through the years, our home has expanded to include our street, our schools, and more recently, to the entire Tucker community. By purchasing our home in Tucker, we bought into way more than we ever thought, as evidenced by Representative Mitchell earlier. This past year, I've had a very unique opportunity to be invited into over 30 homes all across the proposed city of Tucker. In an intimate setting, I was able to see firsthand the love the community has for each other. I have been fueled and overwhelmed by the community's support and outreach. The cityhood discussion is not new to Tucker. It dates back to the 70s, but timing is everything, right? The Tucker community is a motivated and civic-minded people. These people, the Tucker community, want to incorporate. They want to be able to steer their own future together. I have great respect for you, our elected officials, and the roles that you guys have taken on. This is no easy job. I would like to ask of you one small thing. Please consider Tucker and move our bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Walker, and on deck is Rebecca. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Thomas.
Good morning. I'm an attorney for the past 22 years and a resident of Tucker for the past 17. I was also a member of a study committee for the Tucker Civic Association from 2005 through 2006 to look at ways to improve Tucker. I heard earlier the chairperson mention that this was about fixing DeKalb. Well, the city of Tucker is not about fixing DeKalb. It's about preserving and improving an already great community with great people who are here today. One of the things that has always baffled me about Georgia is this is a state that's so rich in history, yet we throw our history away. We're one of the original 13 colonies, one of the first to sign on to statehood. We have the oldest state-chartered university, yet we tear down our Olympic venues, our ballpark that we won the World Series on. Tucker is a 121-year-old community, and it's worthy of preserving because of the people who are here, because of the people who have gotten involved in the community. There's also a great excitement about a city of Tucker. You all should come to Tucker and just drive our streets and look for yourselves. When you go all the way from the Smoke Rise communities to 285, you'll find Tucker or Tucker 214 cityhood signs going up everywhere. And the competing city signs have been disappearing as the Tucker ones have come out. If you traveled down Henderson Mill at the beginning last year, you'd have seen signs for both. Now you'll only see Tucker 214 signs on Henderson Road. When I go running through the neighborhoods, and my neighborhood's back streets, not the main streets, but areas where you don't have a lot of traffic, you find Tucker 214 signs. If there wasn't a lot of excitement about a city of Tucker, you wouldn't find these signs there. A person on my block that I haven't even met put one up and without even talking to them. So for these reasons, I think you should support a city of Tucker, give it priority over everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're looking at 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick.
And we have 5 people.
My name's Rebecca Koblentz. I'm a 25-year resident owner in Tucker, and I also represent the North Royal Business Association and a number of owners of businesses in the Tucker area, in Stone Mountain and Tucker, and we have been included as an ownership group and feel like maybe our voice isn't heard, though our dollars are going to definitely be used, and we want to make sure that that is something that is a very important part of this, because we will be supplying the money for Tucker as business owners, and we need to make sure that we are heard. And one of the biggest problems that we have with DeKalb County, and I'm so sad that we are having to do this because I love DeKalb County, and I would love for DeKalb County to succeed, but it is bringing in new businesses that can't get their business licenses, can't get through to get started in DeKalb County. And we want to make sure that this does not happen in the place that we are included, whether it's Tucker or a combination of Tucker Lakeside that's come up lately, which maybe would be something that we need to look at. So we just want to make sure that we as business owners who supply the tax dollars are looked at and made a part of all of the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we still have 4 to go. Are any of you desperate? We have 2 minutes. Any of you desperately wanting to speak? The 4, Anita, Lisa, Jonathan, and Cynthia. Okay.
Oh, no. Well, really quick, I have it all written down. I'll be short and sweet. My name's Anita Stoltzfus, 13-year resident of Tucker. My husband and I are very active volunteers to get the jobs done, as well as all these people here. And I ask you to please pass our bill, HB 77, number 1. Number 2, we've gotten the job done as volunteers. Let Tucker take it to the next level as a formal city, number 2. And number 3, let our volunteer track record be the deciding factor in saying yes to our bill. Number 4, lastly, I challenge each and every one of you. Number 1, please open your eyes to see what we have done and what we are doing as Tucker. Number 2, open your ears to hear our voices. Thank you for hearing our voices very much. We appreciate it. And number 3, open your own hearts and put yourselves in our shoes. Do what is ethically right. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on. Jonathan.
I'll be short. 15-year resident of Tucker community, Smoke Rise. I wanted to at least make sure we represented the diverse part of Tucker, so that's why I wanted to at least have a minute. Thank you very much. Personal testimony, 3 kids going through the public school system there in Tucker. One has graduated from SCAD. I've got a junior out at Stanford and one a freshman in high school. And it's not about us. It's about the support that we've gotten from the community, and it has just been so valuable. Last comment, I will echo, if I were to sit down and write out what a city should look like, it would look just like Tucker. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right. So, thank you, Representative Mitchell. Appreciate you bringing the bill forward and well, we're going to, lunch is what Chairman Powell said. At this point, we are going to hear from all 3 cities. We have heard from your city today. We will give 1 hour to each of the other 2 cities in the next few weeks, and then at that point, we will make a decision as a committee. to see what we want to do from there. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. We do really appreciate you coming to visit your capital and your house, as we call it, and good luck to you.